let's talk about fall planting, Holly. It's, again, beginning portions of July, and we need to begin to prepare and get things ready to go for the garden.
As Joey had mentioned, many people think that after Labor Day,
Pack it up, take it home.
pack it up, take it home. So you're just done, I guess. Which to me is way too soon, especially because that's the beginning of September, and you can at least garden until October, right?
Well, right,
So,
and there is some community gardens that shut down at
Labor Day.
Labor Day, that type of thing, which is just
that's sad.
Yeah.
Sad for all the tomatoes. So like here in Wisconsin, you if we have a nice beginning, end of summer, beginning fall, you can get tomatoes sometimes through November. But
we've had them the first into the second week in November. Now
Yeah.
that was an oddity, but it did occur.
But even till October, whatever. So, but those are already established crops. So we're talking about new crops or cool weather crops that can handle a frost, but not a hard freeze. So, for example, you would start these or put these in the ground beginning of August.
Right. They're cool.
Depending on where you
cool
are.
weather crops, but they can handle that heat on the early stages of development, and then as those daytime lengths get shorter and the nighttime temperatures get cooler, these crops thrive much better than they do in the spring. Because in the opposite realm, in the spring, we're planting them earlier and try to get them out. Oh, it's going to freeze, it's going to frost. Get them out, and then the days are getting longer and warmer, and that's what these plants do not like.
Right.
So that we find, and we'll talk about it, there's some crops in which we only plant in the fall because we've never had any great success in the spring planting them.
So I think the step you're going to take right now is deciding where you're going to put these.
Well, before that, let's see if we have the seeds in which we need,
Well, that too.
and then try to go find that, because in the situation we're in 2020, you can find seeds anywhere right now. You're a very fortunate gardener because a lot of places have completely bare bones scrapped out every seed that they had. Because
so you want to establish seeds somehow, whether you have them, whether you obtain them, whether you beg your neighbor for seeds, whatever you need to do. So if you have seeds, then you want to determine where you're going to plant this and what you want to plant. So, for example, if you want to plant garlic, that's going to take up about 9 months worth of time. And this really isn't necessarily fall planting, it's just something to keep in the back of your head. So there's that one. But then anything from beets, a lot of more root crops.
Yeah, well, are you going to bring, like you said, do you have a vacancy available? Are you bringing in new grow bags from Root Maker and filling them and planting those? Are you ripping out the summer crops as those get done and planning on putting more product in that real estate? What are you going to do? You got to have a plan here.
Right. So you have to think about that. Now, the longest cool weather crop or fall crop, whatever you want to call it, is broccoli, which takes about 85 to 100 days. So you want to take that in consideration. You probably would want to start that sooner than August 1st, depending where you are.
Yeah. Explain, okay, what we're looking at here, the key date is it's your first frost in the fall.
Right. So that's going to give you an idea of when your first frost
How
might
can we
occur.
find that information?
You just go to your favorite search engine and you type in fall frost date or first frost date, and you can put in your zip code.
And it'll navigate you to a very close
But it's
thing.
good to keep in mind that you might share a zip code with some varying geographical like small pocket climates. Like where we live, we are closer to Lake Michigan, so we have kind of a different climate than the same zip code, which is further inland. So it's kind of
Any given day, it's 10 degrees different.
right. So that's something to definitely keep in mind.
And then whenever you look at the pack of seeds, now all of these that we're going to talk about can handle a frost and a slight freeze. But when we talk about a freeze, we're talking like 25, 20, 18. Most of these, even in mature state, are very unlikely to survive that. So you're looking at the package of the seeds, days to maturity. What does that mean?
So what that means is that is when those crops are going to fruit.
Right. From the time you put it in the seed.
Or create a edible vegetable.
Right. So if you put a broccoli seed in the ground, 100 days from that, that's the days to maturity. If you take a broccoli seed, start it in a tray in a shaded area on your porch, patio, or deck, and then you plant it, it's still that length of time, but you've got a healthy plant that you've started. And it would be recommended, and some of these are root crops, so you want to direct sow. The other ones, you can start them direct seed right in the ground. However, because it's going to be hot, it's going to be more of a challenge to keep moisture around that seed. So it almost would be smart to start them in starter trays, get them established as a baby plant, then put them out so you have a full row of plants and there's no plants missing because of a lack of a germination.
Right. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Also, if you don't have space, maybe you want to get some grow bags or containers or whatever to add space. So you want to keep that in mind where you're going to put those. Is that an option for you? Maybe this is the first time you've heard of fall planting and you're like, this is something I want to do. I want to try, but I don't have any space. So there's an option for you, a container of some sort.
So let's go over what are some of, then there's a lot of them. We're just going to kind of go over the more the popular ones here that you can start for fall. And based on where you're at, we're not going to say you have to start it on this day, but we're going to give you the variety and then the days to harvest or the days to reach to a mature state. Then you can kind of gauge on where you're at. So we'll start with beets. They take about 70 days to harvest. They are root crops, so you're going to direct sow them. And you're going to have to thin them out. Otherwise, you're not going to get a bulb. You're going to get a lot of beet greens or top growth because they come in a cluster seed, and that's just the way nature is.
And the same thing for carrots. They take about 70 days to harvest. And broccoli, as we had mentioned, is the 85 to 100 days. Lettuce is a little bit quicker.
This is leaf lettuce. This is not iceberg head lettuce.
That's 45 days. And then radishes take 30 days. So radishes are your quickest. And if you have little kids or maybe even yourself are a little bit impatient, you can definitely grow radishes and you feel very successful quickly.
So, for example, let's say your first average frost date is October 20th. You could start these radishes middle of September. You don't need to start them too early because they are heat sensitive, daylight sensitive, and they'll go to bolt very quickly before you get a bulb. So the chill in the air, they really thrive on that type of development. And the quickness of it, you don't have to rush to get them in the ground as quickly as you would have to like broccoli that takes 85 to 100 days.
Right. And then spinach is the 45 days or so. Now,
disclaimer on the spinach, you don't have to wait until you get the big bulky leaves like
you could harvest it sooner.
Baby spinach.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Now, these are ones that we like to grow in the fall, and this includes turnips and rutabagas. Turnips are kind of smaller, so they take about 60 days. Rutabagas are a little bit bigger, so they take about 90. But if you plant them at the same time, you can harvest those rutabagas a little bit sooner. It's not a huge problem.
Garlic is a fall crop. People do plant it in the spring. We've experimented with it with smaller bulb size, but we always plant it the first Saturday in October each year. We'll have a segment coming up in a few weeks on the great way or the best way to grow successful garlic. We'll cover that in more detail. But yeah, you want to. It takes 9 months, as you talked about earlier. A lot of real estate used up, but it's very, very worth it. If you've never grown garlic in your own garden, in your own flower bed, in your own side bed, you're missing out.
Right. And then peas are fun to grow, especially if you had a spring that maybe they weren't weren't successful. You can try them in the fall. Those take 70 to 80 days. And yeah, we got lettuce, cauliflower 50 to 100 days. And then Swiss chard is 50 days, and Swiss chard is very hardy, so it's one of those ones that you can leave for a while.
And with the spinach and with the Swiss chard, you want to harvest the outer larger leaves and leave the smaller leaves to develop, and you work that cycle. The big ones harvest, and then you leave the little ones alone. And then kale is 30 to 50 days based on your variety. There's several different types of kale available. But now's the time to start getting these things figured out, what seeds you have, what seeds you might be able to scrounge up online based on what like seedsavers.com has available still, as they've had a record year because of everybody deciding that, we can't do anything. Let's plant a garden and see what we can make happen of that. So it's worth a try. But with any of these, don't think that, oh, we're just going to go in and plant these things and everything's going to be unicorns and jelly beans. There are going to be problems. You will face. There's still going to be insects.
Unicorn rainbows and pots of gold.
Yeah, there's still going to be insects that will damage some of these crops. You will have crop failure. That's just part of the whole thing.
Especially when you get past Labor Day, if you have to listen for frost warnings and hard freeze warnings, especially where we are, because all of a sudden you could have one night that could wipe out a lot of your plants. So you would want to pay attention so you cover those.
And these are hardy enough they can handle most of those type of temperature fluctuations.
Right, but you just still want to be aware. For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.